Serena. The Christmas music blaring on the radio caught me off guard. I normally didn't even turn the damn thing on, but sometimes it had a mind of its own. I groaned and turned it off. Yes, I realized living in the middle of Wyoming meant I could look outside and see all the showy peaks in the distance, and that alone should make me want to be happy about Christmas, but I just couldn't get into the spirit this year. It didn't help that I didn't celebrate it. I celebrated Yule, which was a whole other issue. Living here, there wasn't much in the way of Yule celebrations, even though I learned to make my own just for me and my sister. I grabbed my clothes and changed into something that would keep the cold out while I was driving up to the cabin. Even if it was just going to be me this year, that place was the only one that seemed to even feel like the holidays. The drive would take most of the day, but I had all my favorite movies, snacks, and comfy pajamas to keep me company. That was all I needed, really, and since it was just me, there was no point in taking my usual Yule decorations. My phone buzzed, and I glanced at the text from my sister Callie. It was a photo of her and her new husband on a beach in some tropical location. A part of me wished that was what I was doing right now. Laying on a beach with nothing to worry about but keeping sand out of my ass. Maybe one day. I grabbed my bag and locked my door for the long drive. The only thing on my mind was getting to the cabin and getting a fire started so I could get cozy on the sectional couch and relax. This time of year was always hard for us, but we made it work. Now it was just me. I stopped on the way and grabbed a snack at the local gas station. The feeling of someone watching me made me look up, but the only person there was an older, taller man with dark hair. He smiled at me and I turned away. The feeling of something being off pushed through me, but I shoved it away. It was just some guy. I glanced at the picture of my mom. She was so young in it, and everything about her screamed she was ready for the future. It was too bad that wasn't how it would go for her. I guess when you have kids young and think life is going to be full of everything you wanted, you looked like that. I hadn't been lucky enough to ever feel like that. The drive was slow since there was snow on the ground, and when you got out to these county roads, they didn't think scooping them was a top priority. My little Jeep made it through okay, but if it kept snowing like this, I might end up stuck up here for a few days. I really hope that doesn't happen. I pulled up to the little cabin and made my way to the door. The key slid right in and the door popped open. Everything was exactly as we'd left it the last time we were here. The dark-colored couch was the first thing you see when you walk in. It's probably because it's the largest thing in the entire place. My mom insisted on it being big enough for all the family, even though there were only 2 of us. I guess she thought there'd be more in the near future or something. Maybe that was part of her German heritage talking. I turned to the little kitchen area and dropped my snacks on the counter. I had another load of food just in case still in my Jeep to grab, so that was next on my list. Once everything was inside and put away, it was time to light a fire. My favorite part of the trip, if I'm being honest. I moved to the fireplace and checked it to make sure it was okay to light a fire in and wouldn't throw the smoke back in the cabin. That happened one year, and I remember how miserable it was until we got the thing going right again. My smile faded when I realized that was the last year my mother was here. The last time I saw her smile in person. Maybe coming here is a bad idea. I shook the sadness away and got the fire going. This was going to be a good few days, and I was going to be happy. No matter what. The first couple of days went just how I wanted it to. I made some food, watched some movies, and fell asleep on the most comfortable couch I have ever laid on. It was just like I remembered and just what I needed. But tonight was Yule. I glanced at the undecorated tree we left up all year up here. It didn't matter, since this was the only time we ever came up here. It looked the same as it had for the last few years when we got it. But it was just a plain old green tree with nothing on it. That part made me a little sad. Maybe I should have grabbed my decorations and at least done the tree. Too late now. I thought the cool air might be good for me, so I sat on the porch for a bit, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sun go down. It was quiet and the falling snow made everything that much more muffled. It was almost like the world outside didn't exist. It was just me at this cabin and there was some peace to that. I walked back inside and sat on the couch. Watching a movie would pass the time, but I was starting to get the movie marathoned out. I'll just go to bed. When I wake up, it will be about time to head back and a night's sleep will do me good, I said to myself. The comfy couch was too enticing, and I laid down for a nap. That is until I felt a hand wrap around my mouth and my eyes flew open. Leaning over me was something from nightmares. His face was contorted into a crude smile, with fangs poking out of his mouth. He held his hand over my mouth and a deep laugh erupted from him. "You're a little old for a child," he said, letting his eyes run over my body. "But I guess you'll do." I pulled his hand from my mouth and he grabbed my arm. His grip was strong and his nails dug into my skin. "Let me go," I yelled, and he yanked me to him. "No," he said with another laugh. "You might want to close your eyes for this." I narrowed my eyes at him. "Suit yourself." The world shifted under me and I felt like I might pass out. Everything was a swirl of color everywhere at the same time and the sound. The sound of everything going too fast. I couldn't take it and felt my body give way and my vision go black. Chapter 1. I blinked as I woke up with a splitting headache. That was a weird dream. When I sat up, the world spun and everything went blurry, but I was at least in my bed, right? Finally, my vision cleared and I could see the room around me. I was very much not at my family's cabin. The room was small and dark. There were odd things leaning against a wall to the left of me. Mostly old toys and some discarded clothing. The smell was earthy mixed with wood, like someone lit a wood stove and kept it going all the time. I was on a bed in the corner of the little room. At least my kidnapper took the time to put me in a bed, I guess. It still didn't take away the pounding headache. I slid off the bed and slowly made my way to the door. At least I could just leave, maybe, if he didn't lock the door and plan on keeping me a prisoner here forever. As soon as my hand touched the knob, I heard movement behind me. "What are you doing?" a gruff voice said. I was honestly scared to turn around. But I did. I got a full view of my captor and shook my head in disbelief. He smiled and his oversized fangs were the only thing I could look at. That and the dark red and black curved horns on the top of his head. He was wearing a heavy coat and work pants with books. Everything you'd expect for someone working in the cold. "What is this place?" I asked. He studied me for a moment, like he was thinking of how to say it. "This is my home and you're my," he took a breath. "I don't know what you are. You took me, remember?" I smarted off, and he sighed in frustration. "You were supposed to be a child." I crossed my arms. "Obviously not," I said. "Doesn't matter. Once a deal is done, it's done," he said, taking a step towards me. "This is your home." "This room?" I shook my head. "I have a home and a job." He laughed and shook his head. "You won't be going back there." "What are you?" I said, as he closed the gap between us. "You really don't know?" I shook my head. "I'm the Christmas boogeyman." I rolled my eyes. "I steal children who are naughty and take them to my home." "And then what?" "What do you do with the kids?" If this was just an elaborate dream, might as well make it good, right? "Lots of things," he said, avoiding the question. "You still didn't tell me who you are," I said again. "Some people call me Krampus," he smiled, and those fangs looked so much larger when he was this close to me. "And you're mine now." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Standing alone in this room was the weirdest thing I'd done since I got here. At least that Krampus guy was gone for a while. He made it sound like he owned me just because of some list he had with my name on it. "Relax, Serena, it's just a stupid dream." None of this is real. I sat on the bed and pulled my legs up to my chest. I could just stay here and play this thing out, or I could see what happened when I went outside. The first time I'd went for that door, he showed up out of nowhere and basically said nothing important to me. What made me think he wouldn't do that again? He steals kids. Where are these kids he's taken over the years? I remembered a little about the stories my mom used to tell us about being good, or we'd be taken by the Krampus and made to work for him. Is that what my mind is creating right now? I shook my head. Even if this was a dream, there was no way I was staying in this stupid room and letting it play out. I had to get the hell out of here. Letting my legs down, I stood and hurried to the door. When I touched the knob this time, no one came. I let out a sigh of relief and pulled the knob. The door opened and a gust of cold air flooded into the room. I wasn't wearing winter clothing at all, and when the air hit me, I closed the door in a hurry. I glanced around the room for anything I might be able to wear. In the corner was a heavy coat that looked to be close to the right size. When I slid my hands into the coat arms, I realized it was still a bit big, but it would protect me from the cold enough I could maybe get back to my cabin and get the hell out of here. I opened the door again and stepped into the cold air. The wind was blowing the snow on the ground all around me, but I kept going. I closed the door behind me in case he came back to check. At least that would buy me some time. The snow crunched under my feet and I looked around as I walked. There were other little houses dotting the area. Most were older looking with wood walls and what looked like straw roofs. I hesitated in going the other direction. Maybe there was someone in one of those places that could help me get out of here. I turned back to the little cabin I was in just a minute ago. It was only about 50 feet away. The others were just too close and I was suspicious. What if they were friends with that creature and would just call him to come get me? No, I had to go further for the help I needed. Walking for what seemed like forever was the only thing I would do. The cold was starting to sting my face and my hands felt like frozen nubs. I pulled my hands into the coat to attempt to keep them warm, but I didn't know how much further I could go like this. I sat under a nearby tree and bunched my legs up under me. I was cold everywhere but where the coat was covering me. There was no way I was going to make it out of this place. If this was a dream, now was the time I was begging to wake up.
Chapter 2. Krampus, that stupid woman. She really ran out in this weather to get away. What was she thinking? I cursed the cold for being so brutal here. When I chose to settle in my homeland, I didn't think much about the weather. Why would I? When I took a new child, they seemed to listen better than Serena. She was going to die out here if I didn't find her before dusk. I glanced at the boys, who were picking up firewood for their own homes, and shook my head. She ran. I raised my head to see one of the first boys I'd taken so many years ago. He was an adult now and free to leave, but Sam decided not to. She did, I answered. I have to find her before night comes. She won't last the night. I'll help you, he said. I raised my hand and shook my head. No, you just make sure all the kids get to their homes. I don't need more of you getting lost. You forgot I know these woods better than anyone here, he said with a smile. That kid came so far in the years here. He'd figured out who the hell he was in those woods and I was glad to help him. Except me, I said and followed the direction of her scent. She was at least smart enough to grab the coat I left in the cabin for her. That would help her more than anything, but it was still far too cold for a little human to be roaming around in at night. As I walked, I couldn't stop thinking about how I'd ended up with her. It was so confusing. She wasn't a child, like the list said. This was a full-grown woman. I probably could have left her, but when I saw her sleeping so peacefully, I couldn't help wanting to take her. What I'd do with her, I had no idea, but she was mine now. Finally, I saw her sitting under a tree, her face buried in her arms to keep warm. She was leaning back against a large tree. I walked to her, ready to give her hell for leaving, when I realized she wasn't moving. Panic went through me. I'd only had her for a day and already she was in trouble. I was terrible at this. I reached down and touched her shoulder so my presence wouldn't scare her, but she didn't move. Kneeling down, I pulled her hood back and lifted her head. She wasn't moving, and her skin was cold. I scooped her up and carried her as fast as I could back to the little cabin she'd ran from. My body heat would warm her enough to keep her alive till I was able to get her back and start a fire. That was the only thing I could count on. Getting her back and getting her warm. Then I'd unleash hell for getting herself so close to death.
Chapter 3, Serena. I groaned and my joints protested as I moved closer to the warmth. I put my hand on the soft fur and let my fingers play with the warm fibers. It was so much better than the cold I felt a few hours ago. Then I realized what was happening. My eyes flew open, and I looked straight in his face. His eyes were closed, but the rhythm of his breathing felt calm in a weird way. His arm was under my head and pulling me against him. I glanced around us and realized we were back in the little cabin and on the bed. I pulled my hand away from his chest and rolled slowly away, but he curled his arm up and I rolled right back into him. This is frustrating. You need to stay warm, his voice said, but his eyes stayed closed. I'm warm enough, I said, rolling out of his grasp. I ran right into the wall and sighed. I heard a soft chuckle behind me and turned so I could see him, but stay out of his grasp as much as possible. His eyes opened, and I felt the slight anger behind his eyes. What were you thinking going out there alone? I'm not staying here. I want to go home, I said. I thought I could walk back to my place. There's no way we're that far from my cabin. He shook his head. We're thousands of miles from that place. If you run away like that again, the cold will kill you. It didn't this time, I snapped. Only because I went after you. He sat up and leaned on the head of the bed. If I hadn't realized you were gone, you'd be dead right now. What? Do you want a thank you? I grumbled. It would be nice, but I know it wouldn't be sincere, he growled and crossed his arms. Tell me why you took me? I pressed. He kept his eyes on me. Your name was on the list. I told you. What list? The list, he said before throwing his legs off the bed and standing up. I crossed my arms and stared at him. He huffed. You know the naughty and nice list. Like Santa? I laughed, and he cocked his head. Yeah. The naughty kids get put on my list and I can scare them or in some cases take them. He watched me and I stopped laughing. He was serious. So, you got my name and then just decided? Yeah. She looks like someone I want to take. I sighed and leaned against the wall. It was just a little cold, but felt good on my back. Something like that, he answered. I guess I could have left you there. He leaned over the bed and his large frame made it where he was almost to me without even touching the mattress. But I didn't want to. Why? I almost whispered. Because, he said, letting his knee come onto the bed and getting closer. I want you and I get what I want. I kept my eyes on his and he smiled before retreating back off the bed. So, you're just going to keep me here until I agree? He shrugged. Or I get tired of trying. That was my way out. Well, you should just take me back then right now, I said and cocked my head to the side. I'm not letting you anywhere near me. He chuckled. Whatever you say. He stepped back and leaned against the wall, right by the bed. But you will, and when you do, you'll never want to leave. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. What the hell is he thinking? Did he really think I was just going to be okay with staying here? I mean, I was thankful he didn't let me freeze, which he could have done since I was the dumbass that ran off. But that didn't mean I wanted to pay him back with my body or my heart. I sighed to myself and glanced at the fire in the fireplace I hadn't noticed until now. He really thought I'd just be okay with him. Well, that wasn't happening. The fire made the entire place brighter and warmer in more ways than one. I wondered why he didn't do that in the first place if he wanted me to stay so badly. Something else to file away for later. Maybe there was more to that than what I knew. I wandered around the little cabin and found a shelf full of books. They weren't my normal type of reading, but they would do. I picked one out and thumbed through it before glancing at the cover. It was one of those romances with a half-naked man on the front and fancy lettering. Something about a duke and a maid. I chuckled and grabbed another one. It seemed Krampus had a thing for historical romance. Then it dawned on me. What if this was his cabin? He'd be back, and I'd have to deal with him again tonight. I groaned at the thought. That would make it so much more annoying. At least I had a little time. I glanced at that silly little book. Why not? I said to myself. It would pass the time and, who knows, maybe I'd actually like it. I started reading and didn't notice how much time had passed until I felt the bed move and glanced up. He was sitting on the edge with a plate of food in each hand. I figured you'd be hungry, he said in an obnoxiously sweet tone. I held the book up. I'll lose my place. There's a bookmark in the back, he said, keeping his eyes on me. I grumbled and opened the back cover. Sure enough, right there was a simple dark green bookmark just waiting to be used. I slid it into my page and sat up. He held the plate closer to me and I could finally see what was on it. Ham that smelled sweet, and mashed potatoes and gravy, and a bun with some butter and jam on the side. It's only some of the food at the celebration, but it goes on for several days, he said. You'll celebration? I said, taking the food. My stomach grumbled in anticipation. He nodded. The boys love it. Boys? I said, before shoving some ham into my mouth. The others that live here, he said. You mean the people you steal, I said. He shrugged. If you see it that way. How else am I supposed to see it? I watched him as I spoke. You took me from my bed. I'm guessing that's what happens to everyone here. In a way, he said, but there was something behind the way he said it that made me think there was really more to it than he was wiling to say. At least right now. You're hard to figure out, I said without thinking. He laughed. Not really. I raised an eyebrow. They paint you to be this boogeyman, but you act like you're doing some favor. No favors, just my job. I took another bite of the ham. It was better than anything I'd had in my time cooking or my mom's. My thoughts slipped to her for a moment. If she knew all this was real, she'd lose it. What are you thinking about? He asked, cocking his head. You look sad. I snapped my gaze to him and shook my head. Nothing. There was no way I was going to go through all the history with my mother to someone I just met and might be an actual hallucination. I hadn't decided yet if he was real or not. He sighed and took a bite of his own food. You know, you don't have to be stuck in here all night. You want me to go to your little party? I said, shaking my head. Nope. I'm good. Allergic to fun? He said with a toothy smile. It was odd to see someone that was supposed to be so scary look at me with like that. He still looked like he could rip a person apart, and those fangs. But there was something warm about him I couldn't figure out. I don't think standing outside in the cold is going to be a good time. I like the fire. I smiled as I spoke. Uh-huh, he answered. Suit yourself, I guess. He stood and walked towards the door before turning back. I'll see you after the party tonight. Great. Chapter 4. The laughing outside made me look up from my book. I was half expecting Krampus to come through the door, but he didn't. I grumbled in annoyance at the laughing as it mixed with music. This was going to be super annoying, and there was no way I was going to get any sleep at all if it kept going for much longer. I closed my book and crawled out of the bed. When my feet hit the floor, I was surprised at how warm the wood was. It was comforting, but another laugh pulled me out of my thoughts. I made my way to the door, getting madder as I went. I didn't want to be here, and now I was stuck listening to them all laugh and have fun while I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs. I opened the door, ready to let loose on them, but the string of lights and the sight of all the teens and almost grown boys caught me off guard. What in the hell? I stood there for a moment before one, a dark-haired young man, turned towards me and smiled. "You must be Serena," he said. I just stared at him for a moment. "The boss told us about you." He raised an eyebrow. "My name is Sam." "Hi," I said, rubbing my arms. "You should grab a coat and come out with us. Most of the little kids are sleeping." "Little kids?" I shook my head. "How many did he steal?" "He didn't steal anyone. He saved us." "Sam," a gruff voice called, and I followed the boy's gaze. "That's enough. She needs time to adjust." I humped at Krampus, walking through the group towards us. "Of course you're going to be right in the middle of all this." "It is my party," he said. Sam gave me a smile before walking off, leaving me standing in my doorway with Krampus. I didn't know how to tell him his precious party was too loud without risking him getting mad and locking me in this stupid cabin forever. "What?" He smiled slightly and rolled my eyes. I forced a smile and went to close the door. He blocked it with his hand and stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Grab your coat and come out," he huffed. "I'm good," I lied. The fact was, I'd never been so bored in my entire life. A book I liked. "Yeah, that would make it better, but these were not my preferred ones." "You need more up-to-date books," I said, holding it up. "Those aren't mine," he said with a smile. I narrowed my eyes at him. "Great, so I can burn them," I mocked. He shrugged. "Do what you want." I sighed and plopped onto the bed. "I want to go home." "I want you to stay here," he said. "Or you could come out to the party with us and loosen up." I blinked at him. "Why is that so important to you?" "To understand this place better, you have to see all its magic," he said simply. "There is no magic here," I mocked. "Just a creature who steals people and then makes it seem like it's good for them." He moved faster than I could even look at him and was right in front of me, leaning over my frame. He was so much larger than me, and him standing while I was sitting only made him more intimidating. "I only take who is on the list," he said, leaning closer to me. "Your name was there. I took you." "But even you said you didn't have to," I said, my voice shaky. I was scared, but a part of me was more intrigued. He blinked, letting his confidence wane for a moment. But just as fast, it was back. "You're here now and neither of us know why." He leaned in closer and I felt my breath catch slightly. "What is wrong with me?" "But I promise you'll enjoy it if you let yourself." His hand slid up my arm and cupped my cheek. I stared into his dark eyes, searching for something I wasn't sure I could find. A reason to agree to what he was asking. A reason to want to stay. There was a pull there I couldn't explain and wasn't sure I wanted to. "Why?" I put my hand on his. He didn't answer and stepped back. "I don't want you to be stuck alone in here. Just come to the party." I sighed. "Fine." The minute I stepped outside, the music didn't seem so loud and everything smelled different, like it adjusted just for me. I glanced back at Krampus and he just watched me as I walked through the group of kids and deeper into the party. There were lights hanging between the houses and along the path. I couldn't figure out how there were so many Christmas lights, but each one seemed to have an unearthly glow to them. Then there was the snow. It wasn't just falling casually, it was falling slowly and evenly, like it was a part of the party itself. I let a few snowflakes fall in my hands and smiled slightly. I loved the way the snow felt against my skin. "I told you, you would like it," Krampus said, walking past me. I rolled my eyes. "What is this?" "A party," he said, not looking back. I struggled to keep up with him. I get that, but is it a Christmas party or Yule or what? He stopped and turned too fast, making me plow right into him. He grabbed my arms and kept me from falling back, his eyes never leaving mine. It's a party for me. I told you, my party. When I didn't say anything, he went on. For the end of the season. After you've grabbed your kids, I said. After I've brought the ones back that needed to be, he corrected. You don't know the whole story. Then tell me, I said. He sighed, his hands still on my arms, holding me there. He glanced at the kids and then pulled me by the hand through the party. Once we were on the other side of everyone, he turned back to me. You are incredibly nosy. You're the one that took me, remember? I crossed my arms and cocked my head to the side. Whatever this was, I wanted to know. No, scratch that, needed to know. The list is for kids who dash. Are naughty, I finished for him. I got that. Let me finish a damn sentence, he said, warning in his voice. The list is for kids who are troubled and need a little help, he finished. Help? He nodded. A lot of them are alone. They have a family here, he said. You take kids to give them a better life? I was so confused. He just watched me. They make it seem like you're this scary thing that steals kids and eats them, I said. He laughed and shook his head. No, but it's a great story. So, why me? I asked. I'm not an adult and I have a family. He shrugged. I don't know. But you did when you grabbed me. I pushed a little. He knew I wasn't some kid that needed a creature to take them to a place to be safe. I had a family and a life. I had everything I needed back home. It's complicated, he finally said. So, you do know, I said, shaking my head. You aren't as noble as you think you are. I never said I was, he growled. I'm not Saint Nick. I felt a tinge of fear rise in me. I'm the darker side of things and you know that by the way I look. Are you a demon? I said. He watched me for a moment before he answered. What if I was? That would explain a lot. And what do you know about demons? He said, taking a step towards me, closing the space between us. They're dangerous, I whispered. So, maybe I'm one of those dangerous demons you're so scared of, he said, letting his hands run up my sides. Is that what you want? I shivered. This creature was touching me and the only thing I could do was want his hands to touch me more, to explore every inch of my body until I couldn't think of anything but him. It didn't matter if he was a demon. He was right. I never dealt with one before and had no idea how to handle it if I ran across one. You like danger, don't you? He said, letting his hand drop to my waist. So, let's say I'm a demon. His hand slid lower and rested on my ass. You should be trying to get away from me, little human. Well, there's this thing, called freezing, I said. Freezing or enjoying? He said, leaning down and kissing my neck. I didn't move. Even if I tried to pull away, he could easily keep me in place and there was a part of me that didn't want to move. Is this why you took me? I knew it was a bold thing to say when his hands were all over me. It would either stop him cold or want more. I took you because I wanted to, he said, letting his hand slid around the back of me. I put my hand on his chest and pushed him back. He seemed to reluctantly let go of me and allow me to put distance between us. That's not an answer, I said. It's the truth, he responded, taking a step towards me. I put my hand up, and he didn't move any closer, but the way his face changed told me he was not happy about it. I'm going back to the cabin. I can't do this right now, I said and turned to hurry away. He grabbed my hand and spun me around to face him again. You can't keep running away, he growled. From me, from your life. You have to face things. And you think I can't face you? I snapped, yanking my hand out of his grasp. Obviously, he grumbled. You keep running away. You keep running your hands all over me, I snapped back. He smiled wide and laughed. You are a handful. I made a face and pushed myself out of his grasp. Maybe I'm not what you think you want. You are exactly what I want, he said, keeping his eyes on me. The way he burrowed into me with those things made my skin heat. He didn't look human, but he made me feel more than any human I'd ever met before. I crossed my arms and shrugged. Well, too bad. I turned on my heel and headed back to the cabin and the warmth of the fire I was growing more and more in love with.
Chapter 5. Krampus. I watched Serena walk away and cursed myself for being so bold. How could I think she would be okay with staying here if I kept pushing her? But the urge to take her right now was so strong. I was barely fighting it. She had no idea what she put me through every time we were close. The way her skin felt against my fingers, her hair. I wanted all of it. I wanted to taste every inch of her and more. She was a perfect match, and she didn't even know it. Stupid human feelings. They complicated everything. I rubbed my temple before looking back at all the others. The party was slowly winding down, and they were heading to their own tiny houses. Sam glanced at me before walking over. Did you tell her? He asked with a smile. The boy was sweet, and I wished he would just let himself go back to the world, but a part of me was concerned it would eat him alive. Some of it, I said. Give her time. You're not very good at understanding humans, he said with a light smile. I remember when you brought me here. You huffed and groaned more than spoke. That was a long time ago. When I was mean. You still are mean, he said with a slight laugh. You just hide it better to not scare the kids. I'm supposed to scare the kids, I guess, I said with a sigh. Have you spoken to your brother? I snapped my gaze to him. That was the last thing I wanted to do right now. He was the reason I did this every year. The reason everyone was so terrified of me. Not that he gave me a choice. I guess not, Sam sighed. Maybe you should. What do you know about family? I snapped. See, mean, he said before walking away with a smile. I groaned and walked to my cabin. The one where Serena was probably laying in my bed acting like she didn't want anything to do with me, but the way her body reacted to my touch said otherwise. Maybe it was time I pushed that animal instinct in her a little more. Maybe it was time to see if she'd let her mind relax and enjoy what I knew she wanted. Even if she wasn't ready to admit it.
Chapter 6, Serena. I threw the coat on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the fire while my mind raced. What does he mean, run away from everything? I didn't run away. I went to the cabin because that's what we always did, and what did he know about anything going on in my life? We barely knew each other. The door opened, and he charged through. He barely closed the door behind him before he was almost on top of me. I shrank back in surprise, but his body was caging me to the bed and there was nowhere to go. He growled as his face loomed over me, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen next. I wanted to give you time, but every moment I'm not touching you makes me want to scream, he said. He leaned in and let his lips brush my hair. I need to be in the same room as you, the same bed. My skin prickled at the thought. You still haven't told me why. Because you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I knew the moment I came to collect you that you were mine, he said, letting his tongue lick my neck. And now you will be. He didn't give me a chance to protest before his lips were on mine. The kiss was deep and hungry. Like he wanted me whole. He pressed his knee onto the bed and let his free hands slide down my body. Chapter 7. I opened my eyes and watched the rise and fall of his bare chest. My hands lightly played with the fur he was coated in, and I smiled. He was right in so many ways. I was running from everything I was and making it seem like it was okay. It wasn't. I needed him in a way I wasn't sure I'd ever understand fully, but he lit something in me that was primal and more me than anything I'd ever experienced. I still didn't know if he was a demon, and maybe I didn't care. Maybe all that mattered was I finally felt like I was home. His hand moved over mine and I just stayed curled up next to him and watched the fire burn for a little while. Are you okay? His voice was laced with concern. I'm good, I said. The truth was, it would be a minute before I'd be ready to go at it again with him. Are you sure? He pressed. I glanced up at him and he met my gaze, his dark eyes a shade lighter now. Why are you so nice to me? I'm nice to everyone, he said, and I cocked my head and pursed my lips. Fine. I'm better than I was, but you're different. Because you care about me? I care about everyone here, he said, pulling me closer to him. But you're he seemed to struggle to find the right word. Partner, girlfriend, mate, I prompted. He smiled and raised an eyebrow. Any of those would do. You don't have a lot of relationship experience, do you? He scoffed. I have plenty, just not with humans. I thought about that. All this time in the human world collecting people and he'd never thought about taking one. Not until me, anyway. Why? Why did I not take any humans till you? He glanced at me and I nodded. I wasn't supposed to. So, you thought about it, I said. No, he answered simply. I didn't need that kind of headache. So, I'm a headache? I pulled back and he laughed. Only when you don't listen to me and run off, he said, pulling me back to him. That's fair, I said, relenting. What happens now? Now, we live and we fuck. Crude, I said. We need to work on your manners before you meet my family. I stopped myself. What was I saying? He was Krampus. There was no meeting with my sister. She would lose it and the fact she, as with some demon, wouldn't help. Do warlocks and Krampus get along? Have you met a demon before? I asked, biting my lip. A few. They're not my favorite, he growled. That could be a problem. I'm not a demon, you know. His admission caught me off guard. I know, I lied. I didn't know that, but it seemed rude to bring it up again after I decided to give him my body like that. Get dressed, he said, pulling away from me. We can't stay in this bed all day. I've got houses to build for the new kids the next year. You build everyone's houses? We all do, he said with a slight smile. I bit my lip as I took in the size of him again. When I slid my gaze to him, he was looking at me with a wicked smile. Don't worry, little human, you'll feel it inside you again very soon. I ached at the thought of it, but he was right to wait. He was much larger than any human, and I was feeling it today. You know I can't build a house, right? You can watch or read or something, he said, putting his clothing on. This is your home now. I told you, those books are not my thing, I said, crawling out of the bed and putting my clothing on. I'll get some new books today for you. How? You don't exactly fit in at the local bookstore, I said, taking a seat on the edge of the bed, while he slipped on his shoes. It's called a glamour, little human, he said. No one will see me as anything more than another guy on the street. You didn't even notice when I met you. Now I was listening. Excuse me, I said. He laughed. The gas station on your way to the cabin. He glanced at me to get my reaction, I'm sure. I always check out the person I'm taking. So, you did know I wasn't a kid, I said with a touch of irritation. I told you I wasn't as nice as you were making me out to be. And you still did it, I said and shook my head. You seemed happy about it last night, he said, cocking a smile. I didn't answer. He lied and kept so many secrets. How did I know last night was real for him? How did I know it wasn't just another male taking advantage? I'll see you outside, he said before turning and walking out of the little cabin, leaving me there with my thoughts. Chapter 8. I walked out of the cabin and headed down the little path. I didn't know much about the area, but I did know the main spots now since the party. There were still lights up and people hanging out around the little plaza-type area. The newly fallen snow made it look more magical than it did the night before, but I couldn't stop thinking about what he said. He saw me before he took me and still did it. How long was he watching me before he just made that choice? Hey, Serena, the cheerful voice pulled me out of my thoughts. I looked up at Sam's smiling face. Are you doing better? How should I answer this? I just shrugged. Hey, what do you know about Krampus? He glanced at me before he answered. He's complicated. He knew me before he took me, I said before I could stop myself. Yeah. He does that with everyone, Sam said. I stared at him. What do you mean, everyone? Sam shifted, like he knew he shouldn't say. Sometimes he doesn't follow the list, but he checks everyone out to make sure it's better for them here. So, he knew about my life and still took me? I sighed. He must have had a reason, Sam said. Yeah. He wanted me, I mumbled. I was conflicted, because a part of me was glad he brought me here, but I was mad he didn't tell me the truth from the start. Talk to him, he said before walking away. There is more to him than you think. I watched him leave and continued down the path until I got to the little house Krampus was building with some of the others. My eyes went straight to his muscled arms. They may have been covered in fur, but the way he held me against him last night flashed through my head. His fingers grazing my skin. I felt myself flush at the thought. Serena, Krampus said, looking at me with a cocky smile. Is this for another person you plan on stalking and stealing? I mocked. He sighed. Are we back to this? You should have been honest with me. Would you have stayed? He sat the wood down he was working with and walked towards me. I don't know, I said, honestly, I didn't. This whole thing was so outside of my depth of thinking. First, I thought it was a dream, then that he planned to hurt me. Never the idea he'd want to keep me and make me his. Come with me, he said before grabbing my arm and practically dragging me with him back to the cabin. I pulled my arm away and shook my head. No, I don't know what you're up to, but no. He glanced at me and waved me to him. We're going to see someone. Who? He sighed before pulling me into his arms and stepping into the fireplace. My brother. I didn't have time to react before we were standing in a small shop. The sound of hammers and machinery were loud in my ears, but it all stopped once Krampus looked past me. I finally turned and took in the large shop table in the center of the room and all the people staring at us. Where are we? I whispered, and he just grabbed my hand and led me past the people staring at us. They looked like humans, but their eyes were different colors. Some were purple, others bright sky blue, and don't get me started on the pointy ears. He pulled me through the building and out the door into the cold air. It stung my eyes a little, and I blinked. This was much different from where Krampus lived. There was a path that wound through what looked like a little village, almost set up the same as Krampus kept his home, but it was brighter with more colors and lights. I stopped to take it in and he turned back to me. What are you doing? He growled. This is amazing, I said. The colors and the smells. I smiled as I spoke. Of course you'd like this place, he grumbled. Come on. He grabbed my hand and pulled me further into the little village until we were standing in front of a larger home with red bricks as walls and a snowman complete with a hat and scarf near the front door. Who's your brother? I said without thinking. I mean, this place was great, but it couldn't be who I thought it was, right? You really can't tell? I mean, it's not him, is it? I said. He huffed and knocked on the door. It only took a few seconds before the door opened and there he was, standing there with a huge smile on his face. Santa. Krampus, I'm so glad to see you, he said, letting his eyes slip to me. And you brought Serena. I just stood there staring at him and he laughed again. Serena, this is my brother, Krampus grumbled, and Santa laughed. So, you're him. You're Santa, I said like a stupid 10-year-old girl. No, my name is Nikolaus, but you can call me Nick, he said before moving to the side so we could step in. How are you finding your new home? I sat and shrugged. I still don't know why I'm there. Really? He said. You haven't figured out the reason? I shook my head. He smiled and sat across from me on a little couch. You need him and he needs you. He cocked his head. Krampus needs love as much as you do. Now you both have it. So, I'm his gift? I scoffed at the idea. I wasn't an object to be given. And he's yours, Nick finished. He glanced at Krampus. You deserve love. Krampus looked at me. Do you want to stay with me? The question seemed out of the blue, but I realized what he was doing. He was giving me an out. He wanted me to be happy, and it made me want him more. Even after all the misunderstanding and the way he grumbled and acted like he didn't care. He did, and he wanted me to be happy. Yes, I said. I want to stay wherever you are. He didn't smile, but I could see the relief in his eyes. Good. He glanced at Nick before pulling me to him. Sorry, brother, we'll have to catch up another time. I didn't have time to think before we were standing back in the cabin. His arms were around me and there was nowhere else I wanted to be. The end.